Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm a new YouTube channel, so bear with me as I figure things out. Okay, so you saw the thumbnail of this video, you know what it's about. People have been asking for a top 5 runes video, and I assume you mean weapon runes. So here we are. For my money, the following is my personal list for the top 5 low-level weapon runes in Pathfinder 2e. Now, there are a few things to get out of the way before we get started. First off, this is a list of property runes. Pathfinder 2e is designed around characters having fundamental runes on their weapons. That is to say, potency and striking runes, runes that increase accuracy and damage respectively, are baked into the system and are basically required for high-level characters. They're a no-brainer. I want to talk about property runes, or the runes that add special magical properties to weapons. I want to focus on magic weapon properties that people may not think about. All too often, people just go for the fundamental runes and forget property runes, so let's see if we can't give these property runes some love. Now, there are a lot of property runes, so I'm only going to focus on the runes of item levels 1 to 10. I may do a second video later covering runes of item levels 11 to 20, but today I just want to focus on the low-level runes. The reason for this is that not a lot of games get high-level play, so let's focus on the runes that most players are going to get a hold of. Oh, and please note, the remaster has shifted some of the rune item levels around, so please remember that. Also of note, not all property runes have been reprinted in the remaster, so I'll list the page number and the books of where you can find these runes below. I'm always going to choose to show the remaster if there is a remaster version of the rune available. So as you may have come to suspect, I have a few honorable mentions before we get to the main list. These runes are good to be sure, but they should have an asterisk next to them because they have something in them that is a bit off sometimes. The first honorable mention is the Bane rune. This level 3 item makes your weapon do an extra d6 damage to certain types of creatures chosen when the rune is made. So, you can have a Dragon Bane rune, or Giant Bane rune, or Ooze Bane rune, etc. Undoubtedly, this can be really useful, but there are a few problems with this rune. Firstly, they are limited in what they can Bane against. You aren't allowed to make a humanoid Bane rune or an undead Bane rune. Those categories are considered too common and too broad. Secondly, the rune is uncommon, meaning if your GM is running rules as written, it can be very difficult to get your hands on that rune. Thirdly, they are very situational. If you're playing a game where you are constantly going up against demons, then a Fiend Bane rune would be great. If you're in an adventure where you are constantly going up against all sorts of different monsters, then it could be useless. Speaking of situational, that leads me to the second honorable mention, the Ghost Touch rune. This rune allows your weapons to deal full damage to incorporeal creatures like ghosts. If you are in a campaign where you are constantly fighting ghosts, this is great. If not, then it could never see any use. Get this one with caution is what I'm saying. Another issue with the Ghost Touch rune is, under the remaster, it mentions that some creatures may take extra damage from Ghost Touch runes. Now, as of the making of this video, the remaster monster book called Monster Core is not out yet, so I don't know how common that will be, but keep a lookout for it. The third and final honorable mention is the Ashen rune. On the surface, this level 9 rune looks really good. Every time you hit someone, it lights them on fire, and they take 1d4 persistent fire damage, no save. That's pretty neat. The big issue is that every time you hit, the opponent also has to make a DC 25 will save or become confused for that round. That is ridiculous. Any role player knows that if you're forced to make many saves, eventually you're gonna fail one. So, if you are hitting an enemy 2 or 3 times a round, then that is multiple chances to fail that saving throw and become confused. And the confused condition is terrible for enemies. Confused enemies just attack or cast cantrip spells against one random creature they can see. So, even if the enemy is alone and not attacking their friends, they are cut off from all of their special abilities and most of their spells. Also, Every time you hit a confused enemy, they have a chance to snap out of it. This leads to the other major problem of the Astral Rune, and that is that it is a massive time sink. Not only does the GM have to roll a saving throw every single time their monster is hit, but every time a confused creature is hit, they have to make another roll to see if they snap out of it. Suddenly, every attack has turned into an ordeal and you are rolling a lot more dice than normal. Doing this once is not a big deal, but doing it every time a creature is hit for every fight can really slow down a game. For these reasons, I suggest GMs and players avoid the Astral Rune and pretend it doesn't exist. Alright, that's it for the honorable mentions. Let's get on to the actual list. Number 5, the Flaming Rune. There are a number of item level 8 property runes that add 1d6 elemental damage to weapons. The Corrosive Rune deals acid damage, Frost deals cold damage, so on and so forth. Of them, I think the Flaming Rune is the best. It obviously deals fire damage, which deactivates most, not all but most, forms of regeneration. This is great against trolls and the like who heal every round unless you deal fire damage to them. Also, a lot of creatures, particularly plant creatures, take extra damage from fire. And if you crit with a weapon with a Flaming Rune, the creature is lit on fire for D10 persistent fire damage. This is, I think, the best critical hit effect of any of these elemental runes. Frost might slow an enemy down if they fail a save. Shock is worse, as it can actually branch out and hurt your friends depending on the situation and GM interpretation. The worst is the Corrosive Rune, whose critical hit deals damage to enemy shields or armor that the person is carrying, which means you may very well destroy the loot that you would have gotten from that enemy. All in all, I think fire is the best of the elemental damage runes. Moving on to number 4, Shifting. This rune is great for players who want specific builds. This level 6 item lets you turn any weapon into any other weapon as long as it requires the same number of hands. So a longsword can become a bastard sword, or a bow staff can become a polearm. If your character is based around a very specific weapon, such as the Falcata fighter I previously built, then you can use this rune to turn any old weapon into the weapon you want, so long as you have the right number of hands. This is a great rune for GMs to add to weapons that the party finds. That way you don't have to make sure you hand out only weapons that the party uses. You can just hand out a shifting long spear or dagger and let the party figure out what they want. Another cool thing about this rune is that it is a great hand-me-down. That is, if your barbarian with a +1 striking shifting greatsword finds a new better weapon, he can hand that sword off to the rogue maybe, and the rogue can turn it into like a +1 striking sling staff or something else as a ranged option. Lastly, an oft-forgotten feature of this rune is that it is common, but the items it can turn into are not limited to common-only items. This means that you can shift your weapon into an uncommon weapon that you might not otherwise get access to. Now, some GMs may disallow that use. I don't think that was the intent of the shifting rune when they wrote it, so talk to your GM. But, rules as written, you can turn a greatsword into an uncommon elven curved blade if you want. Really, I think this is a solid rune for our number 4 slot on the list. Number 3, Extending. Okay, this rune is just nuts. It is a level 9 item, so a bit pricey, but you can, for 2 actions, strike someone up to 60 feet away with your melee weapon. Then, after the strike, the weapon comes back to normal. This can be done as many times as you like. Now, some might think this is only just so-so, but think about it for a sec. The rune lets you do your full strength to damage, or dexterity to damage if you're a thief rogue, from across the map. This is great for so many people. Does your rogue want to sneak attack the enemy general from across the camp? Is someone flying above your raging barbarian's head? Maybe your fighter just wants to hit the enemy without breaking formation. All of that is possible with the Extending rune. Now, To be fair, it is 2 actions, so you can only do it once per round, but oftentimes that's all you need. How often have we seen a barbarian or fighter or champion charge into combat because they didn't have a good ranged option and then just get murked by the enemies? Now you can make the enemies come to you. Or maybe the enemy is across a chasm or flying over your head and you don't have a good ranged option to attack them. All of these problems are solved with the Extending Rune. It's just that simple. I have never had a chance to use one of these in a campaign, but apparently they're so good that fellow YouTuber NoNat1 made an entire video about this rune. Go check it out, link in the description below. Number 2, Called. So this rune is just crazy and it can really help you out of a bad situation. See, this lets you, for 2 actions, essentially teleport your weapon to your hands as long as it's within 100 feet of you. Doesn't matter if the weapon's tied up, locked in a trunk, or being held by someone else. It comes to your hand. True story. Several years ago, I was playing a character and the party, including me, walked into a very exclusive bank to talk to the bank manager. The bank forced the party to lock our weapons away in a trunk so we wouldn't threaten to rob the place. Surprise, surprise, something happened and suddenly the office equipment has come alive and is trying to kill us. I just smiled to my GM and said, "I call my weapon to my hand." GM read and reread the rules several times and was like, "Yeah, okay, fine, I guess you have your weapon." Great rune for making sure you are always armed. Highly recommend it. Number 1, the Astral Rune. Okay, this rune I stumbled upon just the other day and my jaw dropped when I saw it. This rune is good from levels 8 all the way up to level 20. Weapons with the Astral Rune deal an extra D6 spirit damage, which most creatures are susceptible to. But that's not what we're here for. That's just the icing on the cake. The real good stuff is that if a creature is possessed, hitting them with an astral weapon does no damage to the possessed creature. Meaning, all damage goes straight through to the monster doing the possessing. So if your friend gets possessed, you can hit them, not hurt them, and also damage the creature controlling them. Also, if you crit with the weapon, the possessing creature has to make a save or just get kicked out of the body entirely. Oh, and also, it has all the effects of a Ghost Touch rune on top of that, meaning it does full damage to ghosts and may do extra damage to them. Like, what? This is almost too good to be true. This is just good across the board. It's a trump card against ghosts and possessing spirits, but even if you never face those kind of creatures, this weapon still does a solid D6 extra damage to almost all enemies you hit. I'd highly recommend this rune to most people. Okay, there you have it. My picks for the top 5 weapon property runes for Pathfinder 2e from levels 1 to 10. I know that there are a lot of good runes out there, and depending on the campaign, some may be better or worse for your personal experiences, but in general, these are the runes I would look to first for looking to upgrade my arsenal. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's start a discussion. If you like this channel and want to see it grow, please like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you want to see more of my kind of content. Until then, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming.